tonight. You know, Governor Justice, of course, called this race a couple of weeks ago, saying that he's going to win. We're going to wait for the official numbers to come in. Let's talk about all of this. You know, people might still be waiting in line just based on the turnout that we've had today. If you're still in line at 7:30, you're still voting, right?
Yes, they hand you a thing called the waiting voters permit. Waiting voters permit. If you're there, and they keep close eye on their watches. And then when it hits 7:30, they give out no more of those permits. But you're in line. That'll guarantee your right to vote.
Now, we've definitely been seeing some strong turnouts today too. Another thing that we want to mention is that there was an 82% absentee ballot return rate is what we reported yesterday.
Right.
What else are you hearing about that tonight?
Well, if people still have absentee ballots, it might be too late to get it postmarked by today because most post offices are closed. Take it right down to your county clerk's office and hand deliver it. You can do that this evening, and they'll get your absentee ballot counted.
There's so much going on. Of course, we're electing a new governor in West Virginia, but the presidential race is one of the big drivers here. What do you think was the big driver for people to get out to the polls?
Well, it's fascinating. 85 million people early voted all across the United States. We set records here in West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, and certain jurisdictions. And so I think people have really lashed out of this early voting thing. Look, if you make up your mind, get it over and done with. You don't have to stand in line on Election Day, and you can, maybe ignore all those commercials you see it on the TV.
Well, you know, I think what's interesting too is that Kentucky only had 3 days of early voting. It had record numbers still. Hundreds of 400,000 people roughly came out to early vote in Kentucky in just such a short period of time.
We have to tip our hat to Chief Meteorologist Spencer Atkins and Meteorologist Brian Hughes and Chris Knoll. The weather was perfect. I've lived in West Virginia for 10 autumns now in 5 election cycles. This is the best weather I've ever seen for voting and for fall colors at the same time.
I think you're right. I think everyone can agree on that on a day when people are maybe deeply divided. Republicans have a supermajority in West Virginia, so how key tonight is this for Democrats?
We're watching 2 very competitive races here in Kanawha County. Incumbent Hollis Lewis, a Democrat, facing Republican Mark Carter, and incumbent Kaylee Young in a showdown match against the Democrat Kaylee Young against Republican Andrew Anderson, who lost by only 58 votes in 2022 to Kaylee Young, closest race in the state of West Virginia
and they're
last
friends
cycle.
too, which is interesting.
Nice people, both of them.
We'll be watching that one for sure. There's a lot to do. We know the ACLU filed a lawsuit in Mingo County today about the ballot issues there. So there will be some posts that we will do on all of this tomorrow, but this is great perspective for tonight. And like we said, we're only just getting started.
And we will not turn into a pumpkin at midnight.
This
thing is going to
not.
go on perhaps for days, if not longer, in some of these races.
I remember one election saying I would stay up until we knew there was a president, and that was the hanging Chad year. So I didn't sleep much that year.
2000.
All right, there you go. Our election coverage continues tonight. All right, there is so much to talk about tonight, and no better person to do that with than our chief political reporter, Mark Curtis, who is here now. Let's just start in Kanawha County, because I was talking about that race between former Secretary of State Natalie Tennant and Chris Walters to fill the spot held by Democrat Kent Carper, who held that seat for so long. That's one of those races tonight, I think, that nobody really knows which way it's going to go. Yeah,
Tennant and Walters are well known because they're previous office holders. They're very well liked in the community. They're very good people who have sincere concerns about Kanawha County, and so their interest in this is going to be interesting. Earlier this year, I think it was in July, for the first time ever, Republican voter registration surpassed Democratic voter registration in Kanawha County for the first time in the state's history.
All right, so let's dive into some of these other things, because there's so much to talk about. Voter turnout is usually very sluggish in West Virginia. In fact, we're among some of the worst when it comes to going to the polls. West Virginians are. It's been pretty good this year. In fact, record setting.
Well, record setting for early voting, with 29% of registered voters casting their ballots up until last Saturday. So early voting has become very popular in the state. Absentee ballots set a record again this year too. So there's a lot of interest because of the way we vote now. It's not just election day, but I did talk to Mike Queen, the Deputy Secretary of State, said voter turnout this morning in person was very heavy. It was steady throughout the midday, and they're saying it's heavy now as people get off of work and they're going to go before 7:30 and vote. So it'll be interesting. I bet we surpass 60%.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. So what do you think the big story tonight overall is going to be beyond voter turnout? I
don't think it's who wins the White House. It's whether their coattails help people down ballot in U.S. Senate races and House races. And even I'm predicting that if Donald Trump wins by a big margin in West Virginia, his coattails will help some of the candidates for state Senate and state House. So the Republican majorities in both chambers may actually increase tonight.
So interesting because it's already such a supermajority.
Right.
And you think back about 15 years ago when you would never have thought that it would be so red.
It's possible we could have one Democrat in the state Senate. That takes us back to Donna Jean Boley when she was the only Republican in the state Senate.
Wow.
Times have changed.
So much to think about tonight. And I guess just real fast, Mark, why is the nation watching our region?
Because we have 3 U.S. Senate races, West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, all in the bubble. They could determine control of the U.S. Senate and swing it back to Republican control.
All right, we certainly appreciate your perspective, and we will check back with you here in just a little bit. You're continuing to get new information in from the Associated Press. Former President Donald Trump winning the battleground state of North Carolina tonight. He receives the state's 16 electoral votes. Let's get more analysis on all of this. For that, we turn to our chief political reporter, Mark Curtis. He's joined by our political analyst, Tom Sussman. Many stories behind the stories tonight, gentlemen.
Yeah, the presidency, of course, has a lot of implications, national implications, and the U.S. Senate plays a part in that. So, if Donald Trump goes on to be president of the United States again, he may get 2 more U.S. Supreme Court appointments. And let's drill down on this.
Absolutely.
Jim Justice, one in West Virginia. Bernie Moreno is how far ahead in Ohio?
Like 6 points in Ohio.
John Tester is losing in Montana, the Democrat incumbent. And so they may flip, 3 seats total, give them a 2-point margin. And then you have, in case there's a tie, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance of Ohio. I say this because abortion has been a big issue. If Trump gets in, it's likely Clarence Thomas is in his upper 70s, Samuel Alito's in his mid 70s. We could see 2 resignations on the Supreme Court in a Trump term.
And then what that does is give them a longer time to control the court. And the Harris folks were hoping that they would get a chance to appoint. Again, it's too soon to say, but Trump sure has got a lot of momentum at this point.
Yeah, he would have 5 total appointments, and his younger appointments, Amy Coney Barrett, the other 2, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, I think are in their 50s.
Right.
So they're going to be there a long, long time. So this could have fingerprints on the U.S. political scene long after Donald Trump leaves office, because he enters the office, if he wins tonight, as a lame duck. Can't run again.
Age 79.
I have to clear my throat. We got so much to talk about here. So let's talk about Amendment 1. Right now, it's ahead by about 5,500 votes. Again, this would ban physician-assisted suicide inside the West Virginia state constitution. It's already against the law here, but the for side, which is to ban it, is leading by about 5,500 votes, but it's pretty much even 50-50.
And I've been looking at some of these counties, and some of the counties are very supportive, and some counties like Kanawha are just dead set against it. So it really depends on where those remaining votes are, but that one could come down to the wire.
Not a big night for Democrats in the state. Their victories were few and far between. They have a net loss of 1 senator, so there will be 30, if the numbers stand there'll be 32 Republican senators to just 2 Democrat senators. We should point out Joey Garcia, currently a delegate, Democrat, Marion County, wins the 13th Senate seat, now held by Mike Caputo, who's been in the legislature, 28 years. Right. And then Scott Fuller, an upset win. He's a Republican down in Wayne and Cabell Counties, District 5, the seat long held by Robert Plymel, the Democrat. And so that's the one gain for Republicans in the state Senate tonight. In the House, it looks like Democrats are going to lose another seat, the seat that longtime delegate Larry Rowe held. He did not run for re-election. And right now, Teresa Howell, the Republican, is leading Tom Jones, the Democrat, 60 to 40%. It's a tough rebuilding job ahead for the Democrats.
The Democratic Party's got to basically rebuild in the state. It looks like the 2 Democratic winners in Kanawha County, Sally Robinson and Natalie Tennant. I mean, she's 300 votes up on Chris Walters. But those would probably be the 2 shining stars for the Democratic Party this evening.
Yeah, and I would say, the thing with Natalie Tennant, she has twice won statewide offices in this state. Of course, she was defeated for re-election for a 3rd term as Secretary of State. But the Democrats need people that can win big counties, like Kanawha County, and they need people that can win statewide. We should mention 2 of the most hotly contested delegate races were both Democrats in Kanawha County. Right now, Kaylee Young defeating Andrew Anderson by just 191 votes.
She tripled her margin from last time.
I know, 58 votes. We've had a lot of close races tonight. It reminds me to tell people every vote matters. It really does.
And then Hollis.
Hollis Lewis, 55% to 45% for his opponent, Mark Carter. But again, the Republicans being very aggressive trying to win those 2 seats, and it looks like the Democrats held on. So all is not lost for the Democrats tonight.